I'm Chip Barclay. I'm currently an adjunct professor at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I was a U.S. diplomat for about 28 years, up until 2014, 2015, and one of my last assignments was as the Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Interest Section in Havana, Cuba, back before we had an embassy that was reopened this past year. There's kind of a mix of a sense of loss and a sense of expectation that with his passing, things might be moving a little bit more quickly in Cuba. Fidel, for a long time, was kind of like the grandfather at the dinner table who just wouldn't quit. He'd be grumpy sometimes, he'd be inspirational at other times, and again, a very large presence in most people's being in Cuba. So he was a dictator, to be frank. I mean, Cuba is a one-party state. It's very authoritarian. He wielded power very decisively while he was running the country, and that sort of transferred to his brother. So you kind of have to assess him as you would any other authoritarian leader whose passing marks a real change in the world. I think it really is up to the new administration as to whether it wants to carry forward the changes that the Obama administration made in tweaking our policy. Trump has said that Obama didn't get a very good deal for the Cuban people, and that he would reassess some of the things that President Obama has done in the last couple of years in terms of opening up to some trade with Cuba and opening up a lot of travel opportunities with Cuba. First of all, the Obama administration didn't cut a deal with the Cuban government in any way, shape, or form. Rather than a deal, the decisions that it took in the last couple of years really were a bet that engagement and opening to Cuba, rather than maintaining our policy of isolating Cuba, would promote the kind of positive political change that we've been looking for decades. I was there about a year and a half ago, and I noticed a pretty interesting set of changes in terms of the number of small businesses that were being opened, the kind of process of rebuilding Havana and refurbishing a lot of the old residences, the types of cars that were on the road. The Cuban economy has kind of had its ups and downs in the last few years, but clearly there's a process of economic and social change going on there. Now, again, people have this notion of Cuba as being this locked down authoritarian dictatorship where freedom of expression is minimal, but that's really not the case. I mean, again, this is a very vibrant society, and there are lots of ways that people express themselves through art, through cinema even, literature, music. And I'd like to put travelers in touch with that kind of dynamism, and particularly some of the people that I had the opportunity of meeting and getting to know while I lived on the island. And I'd like to get them into the U.S. Embassy too, because that's a new twist to the relationship, and the embassy will definitely have its perspective on where the country is going, what's happening in the human rights community in Cuba, what are the prospects for political reform. And then there are a number of journalists on the island too, that longtime hands that have been there for years, that really know the place inside and out, and I think they'd be a really great way for these travelers to get a handle on what's going on in Cuba. Plenty of opportunity to see this culture, this vibrancy that I've talked about too. There's a lot of fun stuff to do on the island, and we'll put people in touch with that as well.